You already know something is different about you. The question is whether you are ready to stop apologizing for it. That difference might make some people uncomfortable. Good. Become so disciplined that people actually will call you crazy. That is not a metaphor. That is what happens when you commit to this path long enough. The people around you will not have a word for what you are becoming. They will reach for the closest one they know, and that word will be obsessed, or extreme, or even crazy. And you will smile, because you will know something they do not. By the end of this video, you will understand the 6 disciplines that shaped Miyamoto Musashi into the most undefeated warrior in Japanese history. Not 6 rules, not 6 habits, 6 internal shifts, each one building on the last, until discipline is no longer something you practice, it is something you are. Stay with this until the end. What you learn here will not leave you. Chapter 1. Metsuke. The gaze that sees everything. Musashi fought over 60 duels in his life and never lost a single one. Most people, when they hear that, think about his sword. They think about his technique, his training, his physical edge. But Musashi himself pointed to something else entirely. He wrote that the warrior must perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. He was not talking about mysticism. He was talking about honest perception. The first sub-discipline of Musashi's life was Metsuke. It is a concept from Kenjutsu, the art of Japanese swordsmanship, and it describes a particular quality of vision, not where you look, but how you look. A warrior practicing Metsuke does not fix his gaze on the opponent's blade, because the blade only tells you what has already happened. Instead, he softens his focus and takes in the whole picture, the body, the shoulders, the breath, the intention behind the movement, before the movement begins. Musashi trained this quality of perception for decades, but here is what most people miss. He did not only apply it to his opponents, he applied it to himself. He once walked away from everything he knew at the age of 29, choosing a life of wandering with no master, no school, and no comfort. Historians who have studied his writings, including scholars at the Kumamoto Prefectural Museum in Japan, note that Musashi used this period not to train harder, but to observe himself more honestly. He wanted to see his habits without the distortion that comes from living inside them. This is where your path begins too. Not with a new routine, not with a new schedule, with honest sight, because here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not undisciplined, they are self-deceived. They believe they are working hard when they are staying busy. They believe they are resting when they are hiding. They believe they are planning when they are stalling. The gap between who you are and who you want to become is not a gap of effort, it is a gap of perception. Metsuke asks you to soften your gaze on your own life, to stop looking so hard at what you are doing and start seeing what is actually happening. Where are you performing discipline for an audience, even if that audience is only yourself? Where are you calling it rest when it is really avoidance? Where are you waiting for the right moment, knowing the right moment is never coming? Musashi did not judge what he saw, he simply refused to look away. That refusal, the willingness to see clearly without flinching, is the foundation of everything that follows. You cannot build discipline on a lie, and the most common lie is the one we tell ourselves every morning, that we are doing our best. Sometimes we are, and sometimes we are simply doing enough to feel like we tried. Metsuke teaches you to know the difference. Chapter 2. Shoshin. The beginner's mind. There is a trap that waits for every person who begins to take themselves seriously. It is the trap of the fixed identity. You decide you are disciplined, and from that moment forward, your energy shifts. You are no longer trying to become something. You are trying to protect something. You are defending the image, managing the reputation, guarding the story you have told yourself about who you are. Musashi refused this trap his entire life. He called himself a student of the way, even after he had defeated every significant swordsman in Japan. He continued to study painting, sculpture, calligraphy, and poetry, not to add skills, but because he believed that a closed mind is a slow death. Research into his later writings, particularly the Go-Rin no Sho, known in English as the Book of Five Rings, shows that Musashi consistently framed mastery, not as an arrival point, but as a direction of travel. You do not become a master and then stop. You become a master and then go deeper. This is the second sub-discipline, Shoshin, the beginner's mind. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki, whose work on this concept has been widely studied in both Japanese and Western traditions, wrote that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Musashi understood this before it was ever written down. He trained himself to approach every duel, every practice, every morning, as if it were his first, not because he had forgotten what he knew, but because he refused to let what he knew become a ceiling. Here is why this matters for you. The version of you that is watching this right now has a story. You have a way of seeing yourself, a set of beliefs about what you can do and what you cannot, about how disciplined you are or are not, about what is possible for a person like you. That story feels true. It feels true because you have been living inside it for years, but it is just a story. Shoshin is not about pretending you know nothing. It is about holding your knowledge lightly enough that new understanding can enter. It is about approaching your own life with curiosity instead of conclusion. The person who says, "I already know how this works," is the person who stops growing the moment they need growth the most. Musashi never stopped asking questions, not of others, of himself. What am I assuming here that might be wrong? What would I do if I were starting this completely fresh? What would I see if I looked at my own life like a stranger seeing it for the first time? These are not comfortable questions. Shoshin never promises comfort. It promises clarity. And clarity, as Musashi knew, is the most powerful weapon you can carry. Chapter 3. Fudoshin, the immovable mind. There is a version of discipline that is fragile. It works when life cooperates. It works when you slept well, when things went your way, when the motivation is still fresh. But the moment something goes wrong, the moment the streak breaks, or the plan fails, or the day becomes harder than expected, it collapses. Musashi built a different kind. He called it Fudoshin, the immovable mind. And it is the third sub-discipline, the first that lives fully in the realm of action. Fudoshin does not mean unfeeling. It does not mean numb. It means that your state of being is no longer at the mercy of your circumstances. The mind that cannot be moved by setback, by praise, by fear, or by comfort is the mind that can act with full power in any condition. Musashi walked into his famous duel with Sasuke Kojiro, the greatest swordsman of the rival school, late. Some accounts suggest he arrived hours after the scheduled time. Kojiro was furious. He had been waiting on a small island, his concentration broken, his composure shaken by the delay. Musashi arrived rested, relaxed, having slept on the boat crossing over. He stepped off, drew a wooden sword he had carved from his oar on the way, and defeated Kojiro in a single exchange. His victory was not physical, it was psychological. Kojiro fought from emotion. Musashi fought from stillness. This is what Fudoshin produces. Not the absence of feeling, but the absence of being governed by feeling. You feel the doubt. You feel the resistance. You feel the pull toward comfort and away from difficulty. And then you act anyway, not to prove something, but because the action has become more fundamental to you than the emotion. The research on what behavioral scientists call identity-based habits points to exactly this. When behavior is rooted in identity rather than motivation, it persists across circumstances. Musashi did not train when he felt like it. He trained because he was the kind of man who trained. The decision had already been made. It was not made again every morning. This is the shift Fudoshin requires. You stop making the decision every day. You make it once, deeply, and then you live it. The immovable mind is not built in a moment of inspiration. It is built in the 1,000 small moments when you did the thing anyway, when the alarm went off and you got up, when the session felt pointless but you finished it, when the result did not come and you showed up the next day regardless. Each of those moments is a brick, and eventually you have a wall that nothing can knock down. Chapter 4. Zanshin, Continued awareness. Most people think the battle is won or lost in the moment of action. Musashi knew better. He wrote about something that every student of traditional Japanese martial arts encounters: the idea that the most dangerous moment in a duel is not the moment of engagement, it is the moment after, the moment when you think it is over, when the tension drops, when the guard comes down, when the mind lets go before the situation has truly resolved. Warriors who died in duels often died in that moment. Zanshin is the discipline of remaining present after the act, of not collapsing in relief after the hard thing, not abandoning your awareness because the immediate pressure has passed. It is the continuation of full attention from before the action, through the action, and into the aftermath. For Musashi, this was not just a combat principle. It was a philosophy of living. He observed that most people are present only during crisis. They focus sharply when the stakes are high, and drift badly when things are ordinary. But ordinary moments are where the path is actually built or broken. The average Tuesday, the unremarkable Wednesday, the forgettable Friday evening when no one is watching and nothing is at stake. These are the moments that reveal who you actually are. Traditional Japanese martial arts academies that have preserved Musashi's methods continue to teach Zanshin as a practice of completion. You do not finish a technique and immediately think about the next one. You remain, you breathe, you feel the full weight of what you just did, and only then do you move forward. This is the fourth sub-discipline, and it changes the way you relate to consistency. Most people fail at long-term discipline, not because they lack the ability to start, but because they do not know how to finish a moment well. They complete a week of good work and immediately relax into days of drift. They hit a goal and stop the behaviors that got them there. They win a small battle and declare the war over. Zanshin says, "You are never fully done, not with cruelty but with care." The awareness simply continues. Ask yourself tonight where you drop your guard. After a good workout, do you eat carelessly? After a productive week, do you write off the weekend entirely? After hitting one target, do you quietly lose sight of the next? Musashi ended his duels not with celebration, but with a return to stillness. He closed the moment with the same intention he opened it with. That is the practice, not constant intensity, constant awareness. Chapter 5. Hyoshin. Ordinary mind, everyday peace. Here is the part that surprises people. After everything Musashi built, after 60 undefeated duels, after a lifetime of training and wandering and refining, he arrived at a principle that sounds almost too simple. He stopped chasing states of peak focus. He stopped treating discipline as something that required special conditions or elevated emotion. He sought the ordinary. Heijoshin is a concept rooted in Zen Buddhism and deeply woven into the culture of Edo period Japan, the era in which Musashi lived. It translates most closely as ordinary mind or everyday peace, and it describes a state in which the mind functions with full clarity and full power, not because conditions are perfect, but because the practitioner has stopped needing them to be. A Zen master of Musashi's era described this state simply. He said, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." This sounds obvious, but think about how rarely you actually do this. How often do you eat without distraction? How often do you sleep without resistance? How often do you work without performing, rest without guilt, begin without hesitation? Heijoshin is the discipline of returning to the ordinary, of removing the drama from the practice, of showing up not with fire and intensity, but with quiet, steady presence, the same way you would show up for something you have done 1,000 times before, because eventually, that is exactly what it is. Musashi trained until each movement was ordinary to him, not exciting, not meaningful in a way that required feeling, just the next thing he did. And from that ordinariness came extraordinary reliability. He did not rise to the occasion. He simply met it, because the occasion was no different in his body than any other moment. This is what the fifth sub-discipline builds in you. When you no longer need the moment to feel significant in order to act within it, You become consistent in a way that is genuinely rare. You do not wait for the version of yourself that is ready. You bring the version of yourself that is here, and here is always enough. The research on deliberate practice, particularly the work that came out of studies at Florida State University on expert performers, confirms what Musashi understood intuitively. The highest performers in any field are not more motivated than others. They have made their craft more ordinary, less charged with significance, less dependent on inspiration, less subject to the fluctuations of mood. They simply do the work, not because it is exciting, because it is who they are. This is Heijoshin, the extraordinary power of the ordinary mind. Chapter 6. Kokoro, heart, mind, spirit, as one. There is a final question that every path eventually asks, not how do I build discipline, not how do I sustain it, but who am I inside of it? Musashi asked this question in the last year of his life. He retreated to a cave called Reimagined, in what is now Kumamoto Prefecture in Japan, and in the final weeks before his death, he wrote 2 documents, the Go-Rin no-Sho, his treatise on strategy and mastery, and the Dokudo, a short set of 21 principles for living, which he completed just days before he died. The Dokudo is translated as the way of walking alone, and in it you find the 6th sub-discipline, the deepest one, the one that makes all the others possible, Kokoro. The word in Japanese contains something English cannot fully hold. It means heart, it means mind, it means spirit, and it means all 3 of them as a single, unified thing. Not 3 separate aspects of a person, but one integrated whole. Musashi understood that the warrior who is divided inside himself is already half defeated. The person whose actions do not match their values creates friction with every step. The person who does things they do not believe in, or believes things they never act on, spends their life in a quiet war with themselves. And that war is exhausting. The discipline of Kokoro is the alignment of what you think, what you feel, and what you do. When these 3 things move as one, discipline is no longer an act of will. It is an expression of being. You do not force yourself to stay consistent. Consistency lives in you. You do not motivate yourself to begin. Beginning is simply what you do. This is what Musashi achieved in that cave. Not perfection, not invincibility, but integrity in the truest sense of the word. A life with no division between the inside and the outside. A life where the man in private and the man in public were the same man. He wrote in the Dokudo, "Do not let your spirit be swayed by desire or attachment." He was not asking you to stop wanting things. He was asking you to stop letting wanting things pull you away from who you are. There is a difference between a goal you pursue and a desire that owns you. Musashi had learned to hold one and release the other. And this is where people begin to call you crazy. Not because you are extreme, not because you are reckless, but because you are integrated in a way they have never seen. You move with a quietness they cannot understand. You stay with things they would have abandoned months ago. You do not need their validation, their approval, or their comprehension of your path. Your path is not for them to understand. It is for you to walk. When Kokoro is present, people feel it before they see it. They feel the steadiness in how you enter a room. They feel the absence of desperation in how you speak. They feel the weight of someone who has made their decision and is no longer negotiating with it. That is the spirit of Musashi, not the sword, not the duels, not the undefeated record. The alignment between what he was inside and what he lived outside. That is what made him undefeatable, not the man with the blade, the man who had become his own discipline. We began with a question you may not have even known you were carrying. What would it feel like to be so disciplined that people could not find a word for it? Now you have 6 words. Metsuke, the gaze that sees everything, the discipline of honest perception, of looking at your own life without distortion. Shoshin, the beginner's mind, the discipline of staying open when comfort wants you to close. Fudoshin, the immovable mind, the discipline of acting without needing emotion to lead the way. Zanshin, continued awareness, the discipline of finishing each moment with the same intention you brought to the beginning. Heijoshin, ordinary mind, the discipline of removing the drama, meeting the ordinary with full presence, and finding power in the unremarkable. And Kokoro, heart, mind, spirit, as one, the discipline that makes the others complete, the alignment between who you are inside and how you move through the world. These 6 disciplines are not a program with a finish line, they are a direction, a path that goes as deep as you are willing to go. Musashi walked it until the last day of his life, and he left behind these words, not to impress anyone, but because he wanted someone to find them and carry them forward. That someone is you. If this video reached something in you, subscribe. More is coming, and it goes deeper. Leave a comment below with one word, the word that names the discipline you need most right now. One word. That is all. Because Musashi understood that clarity begins small, and it begins with you seeing yourself honestly enough to name the thing. Thank you for watching. See you next time. And as always, remember to stay in tune with your own mind frequency.